Fisher-Price and its parent company Mattel are talking about several families, they're talking after several families have slapped them with 2 class action lawsuits, saying in a statement to HLN this: it has, quote, a long, proud tradition of prioritizing safety as our mission. Now, Consumer Reports investigation, remember, linked the rock and play sleepers to more than 30 infant deaths since 2009, and that caused the company to recall 4.7 million of those products. That just happened 2 weeks ago. Regina Calcaterra is one of the attorneys representing the families involved in this class action lawsuit against Fisher-Price. She's with us now. Thank you so much, Regina, for being here. I wanted to ask you about the lawsuit claims the marketing of the rock and play was dangerously false and misleading. Do you believe that there were outright lies when you're talking about the advertising here? Was it neglect? I mean, was there no specificity, I guess, in terms of what age this is appropriate for?
There was a lot of deceiving advertising that Mattel and Fisher-Price played in this. So Fisher-Price is the manufacturer of the rock and play, and Mattel is the owner of Fisher-Price. So both Mattel and Fisher-Price are involved in this. And what they did is, when they came out with the first announcement, which was April 5th, and which was then followed by a recall, is the first thing that they did in their statement was fail to disclose what the real risks of a rock and play sleeper are and the injuries that could happen. And these are things that they know, but the public does not know. So that's the first thing they did. The second thing that they did in their disclosure is they're blaming the victims and shaming the victims. They're actually blaming the parents who had babies die and babies who were injured, and saying that they played a role in this, as opposed to the fact that Fisher-Price and Mattel knew for years what the risks actually were. And they said that in their statement, and this statement is actually causing a lot of parents to continue to actually use the rock and play, because what Fisher-Price is doing is actually blaming the users. And when other parents are reading what their statements are, they're still putting their children in there, and they haven't yet disclosed those risks. And I'll tell you what they are in a moment. But Fisher-Price's statement was basically, we stand by the safety of our products, which is what you said earlier in the segment, but launched the recall due to reported incidents in which the product was used contrary to safety warnings and instructions. So again, what they're doing is blaming the parents. So instead of using this opportunity for the recall to do a corrective advertising campaign or full educational reach out to consumers to let them know what the facts are, they're trying to protect themselves. And these are examples of what the facts are. So they say that you could have an infant in there less than 3 months old, as long as they're restrained. And once this infant turns 3 months old, or they start to roll over, you need to remove them. But the reality is that infants who have been less than 3 months old have died in the rock and play. Consumer Reports have stated that, and in fact, my law firm, Wolf Holdenstein, has been in contact with 2 women who both lost their babies recently. And one, for example, lives in New York, and she had twins. She had a little boy and a little girl. They both were in the rock and play, and the little boy died at 6 weeks old in the rock and play. Because what happens to them, and this is what's not being disclosed, is that when you are in a rock and play, the baby is inclined on a 30-degree incline. So when they're inclined back like this and they drop their head, they suffer from asphyxiation. Or if they go to the side, some of them are actually being suffocated by leaning their head, but when their head twists in the soft fabric of the rock and play. And that is not being disclosed. Because they're just not strong enough, right? They're just not strong enough to get themselves out of that position. Regina, I'm sorry that we've run out of time, but I'm looking at this, realizing this is going to be a very, very expansive, broad a class action lawsuit here. We'll talk to you again as we get more information here, but thank you for taking time for us today. And thank you so much for having us. Of course.